Welcome into this Saturday morning special edition Blue Sky Extra here with you, Chase Parham and Neal McCready. I am in Oxford. Neil, you can see him there in your screen. He is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the site of Ole Miss's 71-64 win over the North Carolina Tar Heels yesterday, moving Ole Miss into the round of 32 for the first time since 2013. And to face the Iowa State Cyclones, we now have a time that is 6:45 on True TV Central Time on Sunday. So we'll hit that. It's funny in the stream. RTH said we're here to discuss the North 9-6 whenever Mizzou last night. No, I don't think that'll come up very much here today. But Ole Miss men's and women's teams do move on to the round of 32. Interesting game for Ole Miss, so good time to jump on and talk about it. Appreciate everybody that had our watch party yesterday in the stream. You guys, I saw you tighten up a little bit with your comments. Ole Miss led by as many as 21-22, got down to a one possession game, and then Sean Padula hit the huge shot for the Rebels. Probably had the regular season shot of the year too, with the one against Oklahoma, and then there against North Carolina yesterday. So Neil, I know you had a busy day. We haven't talked about it yet outside of a pretty quick phone call last night. Kind of take me through Carolina's run first, and then sort of the the shot and Ole Miss pulling it off, and kind of the reaction there afterward.
Yeah, I kind of felt like Carolina was going to make a run. I didn't know they'd make that much of a run. Up 22 with about 17 and a half to go. I kind of felt like it's not over, but the fat lady's starting to, gargle a little. She's getting ready to get started. Um, and then, to Carolina's credit, and they have a pretty good backcourt. Those guys, proud players, they started making some plays. And once they'd struggled from three, and once they hit that 1-3, you started realizing, man, there's a lot of Carolina people here in the building. And it got loud. Beautiful building, by the way. Holy cow. What an amazing facility where the Milwaukee Bucks play. Built about 6-7 years ago, state of the art, spectacular. Just really, I'm a giant fan of that, the whole operation, the way it's built for media, the way it's built for fans, everything. But it got loud. The acoustics in there, it was loud. It was you felt it, and I thought Ole Miss felt it a little bit. I thought Ole Miss started. They just kind of missed some shots. They had some foul issues. And Carolina just kept plugging away, and they got it to 10. And then they quickly got it to 6. You had the Malik Dia turnover that gave them
Mm-hmm.
a quick score. And then, man, when they got it to 2, I was starting to think, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to write on this. I mean, you know me, Chase. You've covered enough games next to me. I'm always thinking about, what do I write? What am I writing? And I was like, I don't really know what I'm writing here. I wrote a couple of things down almost to be silly, and I laughed at them. And then I do remember saying in the game thread, someone's just got to make a bucket. And Sean Padula made a bucket, a big bucket. Carolina went under the screen. And I think as soon as he saw, I think it was 7, the kid from Wisconsin, go under the screen, he took the shot. And I was right in line with it. I was on the second row scorers table, not right behind, but pretty close to the Ole Miss bench. And I had a perfect view for it. And when he let it go, I went, that's in. And then Ole Miss got a stop, got free throws, ball game.
And that was it. Yeah.
And that was it. And, for Ole Miss, I also watched them to see, do they act like they just won the national title, or do they just, and they didn't. They were pretty businesslike. And I agree with Chris Beard when he talked about how in those last couple of minutes, a lesser team would have lost its composure. And they didn't. Even when things weren't going their way, they still sort of plugged along. They'll have to play better than that tomorrow night. They'll have to have a more complete game. But that being said, it was a great atmosphere. There were some people that were there yesterday who commented that this was their first trip to the tournament, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm like, yep, the tournament's amazing. And The deeper you go in it, the more fun it is, and it's if you have a program that can be relevant enough to be a consistent attendee at the tournament, you should do it. And there were a lot of Ole Miss people there. They are outnumbered by North Carolina, obviously, but it was a great environment, a huge win for Ole Miss, and kind of one of those proof of concept validating wins, I thought.
So you focused your column, and I want to get to Iowa State a little bit, but I want to get some sight and sounds yesterday too. You focused a lot of your column on Chris Beard, the coaching matchup. It's very well documented. He now still has never lost prior to the round of 32. He's won at least a game in every tournament that he has been in. But what was it about the game yesterday that you thought he did such a good job of turning the difference from a coaching standpoint?
We had a team full of guys. There's a couple of guys that have been to the tournament before. Jalen Murray's been with St. Peter's. Sean Padula had been in that arena playing for Virginia Tech, ironically, against Chris Beard a couple of years ago. But for the most part, he had a team full of guys that have never been to the tournament. And I thought it was very obvious early that he had his team completely prepared, strategically, mentally. He knew he didn't have to worry about Carolina's size. They went to that early. They got some early looks at the basket. They changed speeds on Carolina. I thought he coached circles around Hubert Davis for the most part of the game. Carolina did come back and showed a lot of heart and pride and all of that stuff. That's legit. But I think Beard knew Ole Miss had to have a hot start, and they got one. And he strategically planned for one. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. He's an elite coach. He is an elite coach, period. I'm not going to do the top two, top four. I don't know how you differentiate stuff like that. He gets the most out of his roster. I told you this yesterday. I never really know how to do this without it sounding like I'm insulting a group of players who are 8,000 times better than I ever was at basketball. So, but this isn't a roster full of NBA players. These guys aren't probably playing in the NBA. Some of them will play overseas, but they're not going to play in the NBA. These are not guys that are going to be back in that arena playing for or against the Bucks in a couple of years. And he just maximizes them. And he's found a way to get them to play together. One of his best players, Matt Morrell, is clearly hurt. And they're just working through it. It's a credit to Matt, but it's a credit to Chris also. And the other thing that you notice, you don't get to notice this when you're in the pavilion, and this is not me complaining about media seating, but when you're up in the pavilion in that top of the 100 level, right in that concourse, you can't really hear what the benches are saying. You can't really get a full grasp of the interaction. One thing that I saw yesterday from having the perspective that I had based on where my media seat was you just really got a sense of how good of a staff this is and how much he listens, not only to the guys on the front bench, but how much he listens to the young guys on the back bench. There's a lot of they were eminently prepared for that game yesterday. That was a program that was completely prepared for everything North Carolina did. They were calling out what was coming. North Carolina would get into a set, and they were calling out, here's where the ball's going. Here's what they're doing. It was impressive.
And he operates that entire second half, basically the end of the last 5, 6 minutes with no timeouts. I mean, usually the last timeout really early in that game. And I know in his press conference, you can find North Carolina and Ole Miss press conferences up at rebelgrove.com. They had He mentioned that they were able to switch in motion without the timeout and while play was going on and still maintain some of that organization and that knowledge during that period of time, which is not always the case. You see breakdowns at the college game, especially when that happens and you're out of timeouts and you've got to find a way to adapt on the fly right there. So,
And he has an older team that
mm-hmm.
helped, and they kind of got unlucky and lucky at the same time on the RJ Davis play where Matt Morrell got hit in the nose. um, that gave them an opportunity to set up something, even though I think they were petitioning and hoping, and I thought they deserved a flagrant. I mean, the rules are, I felt bad for the officials right there because, and you could almost see it in their eyes, and I was real close to them. Like, damn it. We're going to call this, we're going to wipe that play off the board. This is going to be the story of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't intentional contact, but it was definitely a swinging arm into the nose. It was a natural basketball play. You could argue that Matt didn't give him the space to move, but it was. I think had that game been a January 24th game, they would have called a flagrant.
Yeah.
They didn't. So Davis got the shot, and he made the free throw with a minute 8 or a minute 9 to go to cut it to 2. But in that period, instead of fussing at the officiating, what they did was they drew up a play for the subsequent,
Possession.
yeah, the subsequent possession, and Padula made one of those shots that Ole Miss people will remember for a long time. I mean, they will. It'll be a shot that, especially if they win tomorrow, it'll be a shot that will go down as like I don't. Was it Jason Harrison made the big shot to?
Yeah, I think it was like Rafferty or whoever says onions when Harrison hits the shot against Notre Dame that day. It's that type shot.
It's a Derek Millinghouse shot against Missouri in
Yeah.
the SEC tournament. It's one of those shots that people will talk about for a long time. It was. Sean's not afraid of the moment. He's one of those kind of people, and I really have enjoyed covering him. He's fun. He makes eye contact when you talk to him. I think he understands who we are and what we do and that kind of thing. And I asked him after the game because an AP reporter asked the first question about the shot, and I just said, "Hey, I know you've made a lot of big shots, but is that the biggest?" And he thought about it for a minute because he's made a lot of big shots, and he's a guy that made a lot of big shots in his high school career. And he was like, "Yeah, I think given the stage, it probably was." And he goes, I couldn't really think about it like that. At the time, I was just play with confidence and trust all the shots you've taken, and he did, and it was. I couldn't believe North Carolina went under the screen. I mean, like that was the last thing you would do in that moment. It's like you got to go over all screens. I mean, you got to fight through every screen. But I think it was Malik. No, it was Dre Davis. I think set the screen. It was a good screen, and he went under it, and that gave him a breath and knocked it down.
Yeah, I mean, this is not this show, especially today. I mean, we can recap the season when it's over, but I mean, from a history standpoint, again, Ole Miss hasn't been to 32 since 2013. If they win on Sunday, second Sweet 16 in program history after 2001, they lost to Arizona in the Sweet 16. At that point, Neil chuckling at just the lack of experience in this
I mean,
tournament for
it's
this
just
program.
wild, Mary. Like I did the
Um,
stat. I wrote the stat, Chase, that on Thursday. North Carolina going into that game yesterday had more national championships than Ole Miss had tournament wins. I mean, that was
1, 3, 4. Ole Miss has 6 tournament wins even now, if I'm doing the math quickly in my head.
yeah. Yesterday was Ole Miss's 6th NCAA tournament win. I've been on the beat for 17 seasons, and this was their one, two. This was their 3rd NCAA tournament win. It's wild. I mean, it's such a big. It's like
But
it's just it was a cool moment.
here's the thing on that though, and again, this is for next week, and I want to move on to Iowa State. We're not going to sit here for 3 hours today, but I'm watching, and what's in my mind? I was trying to learn a little bit about what North Carolina was thinking. I ended up watching. I told Neil a couple different post game shows, if you will, podcasts, whatever you want to call them, at different team sites and the different networks with North Carolina, and there was this feeling, and I get it. I'm not even making fun, but it's we talk about so much of they were in disbelief and they refused to rate North Carolina against its current situation. They were rating this North Carolina team against the banners and the rafters. And it was this You can't do this at North Carolina. You can't lose to Duke 3 times. You can't do this. You can't do this. It's not who this program is. We would have different expectations if it was Clemson, and we'd have different expectations. And I kind of stopped and went, it's 2025, but why? But why? Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I get
Yeah.
that Alabama football is going to freak the hell out if they don't win next season. But at the same time, Ole Miss was an S. I mean, it's what we laughed about on the podcast on Wednesday or Thursday. Is Ole Miss is an SEC program with a $5 million roster, a $5 million salary of a coach, a ton of money in its athletic department, and they came in and just played a basketball game. Like it's not the same situation anymore. In North Carolina, if they're not efficient and they're not successful, they're gonna get their ass kicked, just like everybody else.
Well, and I'm gonna
And it
pat
is what
myself
it
on the
is.
back here. I'm gonna pat myself on the back here. I wrote a column last week after the Arkansas game in the tournament before Ole Miss played Auburn, and I said this is a dress rehearsal, and it was. Several players told me that in the locker room yesterday that they were prepared for this because of the SEC schedule. I mean, Ole Miss beat by 3 points in a late game, decided in the final half minute, a team that's also in the round of 32. And they turned around and then lost by 5 in a very tightly contested game that had they shot better, they would have won against another team that's in the field of 32.
Chris
They were
mentioned that yesterday in
prepared.
the press conference.
They were prepared for this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they won 11 out of the 20 SEC games that they played. They played a lot of really good teams, beat some of them, lost to some of them, almost beat Texas A&M, almost lost to Oklahoma. You can do the almost things till you're blue, but they played a lot of these games and they learned things from the games where they were successful, and they learned things from games where they failed at the end. And the focus was always, literally always on March, on building for March, on being ready for March. And yesterday, in an emotional, drama-filled deal, they kept their cool, and they, I think, benefited greatly from having played Arkansas and Auburn on consecutive days a week ago. I remember telling you this. I'm like, Arkansas's better than people think they are right now, and they are. And Auburn's good. Auburn's really good. They're weird and they're kind of enigmatic and they're fractured and who knows what the hell's going to happen, but they're very good. And Ole Miss played those teams on a neutral site, and the Arkansas game last week in Nashville. I mean, if I recall correctly, Arkansas had a 3-point lead with 20-something seconds left. And Ole Miss came back and got it. And the Auburn game was super tight. It was a one-possession game with 15 seconds to go. They weren't able to finish it off. Broome made a play, but they learned a lot from that. And I thought they were more battle-tested, as crazy as this sounds, because of all the history stuff. They were more battle-tested than North Carolina. And you know what I'm about to say. I'm a big believer. I love history, but I'm not a big believer in sports history, not in this era. Just because you were once the dominant program, and they were, does not mean you will ever be the dominant program again. You'll have to
Look,
figure it out.
I mean, do you get a little more advantage still? I mean, Carolina's still a good program. I mean, I'm not doing that, but no, I mean, you still got to. It's everyday brass tacks. It's either going to work out or it's not, and that was they were having to come to that reality a little bit. And I went, yeah, you're not there yet. Just go ahead, keep
Yeah.
going. See where it heads.
Well, and
Two
so here we are, right?
things.
We,
Yeah,
we,
go
we
ahead.
talked about this. I mean, I'm interrupting, but here we are. I mean, there's so much focus on the SEC teams that lost in the first round of the tournament. 8-1. They have 1/4 of what's left is SEC.
Yeah, we're not going to rate the SEC on a success or failure till we see what happens at the end of the day for Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M and Kentucky.
Yeah.
Those are all 6 seeds or higher that are still alive in this tournament. And Arkansas is a 10 who has a chance, at least from a puncher standpoint, to win a game tomorrow or today,
Well, and
whenever that
Arkansas
is.
and Arkansas added Boogie Fland, and had they had Boogie Fland all season, they would not have
They
been a
wouldn't be
10
a
seed.
10 seed. No.
I don't know what seed they would have been, but it would have been higher than a 10, maybe a 7 or an 8, but they wouldn't have been a 10.
One moment I want to call out, and maybe you did this in some of your writing, I don't know, but we're talking a ton about Dre Davis. Got off to that hot start, almost was 6 of 7 from three early. Padula obviously had a hell of a game and was patient early on. Padula only took 2 shots through like the first 14 minutes or something yesterday of that game, and then ends up 7 of 14 from the field, I think. But despite having a really poor game, Barnes getting that man-sized rebound late was a huge rebound off that North Carolina miss right before they were able to kind of extend and keep it there at that 2 4 point game right there in the last couple minutes.
I thought David had a really strong defensive game. He's
Mm-hmm.
so big. He's so big. He's so athletic. He's so strong, and he bothered them. Yeah, they called some fouls on him. They were frustrated with him. The official missed one of those calls. One of the calls on Barnes was an offensive foul. I mean, the Carolina guy pulled him down. The official didn't see it. I get it, but he did. He pulled him down. Um, you know, he bothered them. That was physicality, and yeah, it was a big boy rebound there at the end. And they Ole Miss. I thought one of the big things was in that last minute after Sean's three was Carolina didn't get multiple opportunities. They
Mm-hmm.
got in position, got big defensive rebounds in that moment. Had they made some free throws, they would have had an even more comfortable final 30 seconds or so. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I give one of the guys credit. I think it was the rival site when their video last night because the host for I think it's Tar Heel Illustrated. He was like, "Hey, North Carolina came out flat again and whatever," and he was doing kind of that little bit of fan thing. It was kind of whatever, and the other guy goes, "No, no, no, Ole Miss disrupted them, was a tougher team, and just outplayed their ass. That's what happened. It wasn't any of that stuff. They got outplayed. That's what happened."
Until you play against this team, you don't realize how um, effective they are with getting their hands in passing lanes. You don't
Mm-hmm.
realize how physical they are on ball defending. They're very physical off ball. I don't know that you see that from a lot of teams. And with Ole Miss, you've got a handful of guys that sort of pride themselves on their physicality. You've got a couple of angular guys, the way that they attack the rim in Brakefield and Davis. And, Carolina was very focused on Malik Diaz's outside shot. And I thought Chris sort of sensed that must have, and his staff must have felt like that was what was going to happen. And so they went inside to Dia early. And had Dia not gotten a couple of stupid fouls in the first half, and they were fouls, look, you got to adjust to the whistle. The whistle's not going to adjust to you. You've got to adjust to
Mm-hmm.
the whistle. And I think it's one of the reasons that Malik didn't play a lot in some of the second half was he was not adjusting to what the whistle was. And the whistle is what the whistle is, man. I mean, they have the last say. And so you have to adjust to it. And but had he not gotten a couple of cheap fouls, I thought they were going to run Carolina out of the building because Malik kept coming down, doing the too small thing, and they were too small to guard him. But he then he'd go pick up a foul, and he pick up another foul, and now he's got two fouls, and he's sitting on the bench for a while. And I think it's one of the things that prevented them from throwing the knockout punch early.
So let's look at Iowa State for a minute. Iowa State is 25-9 on the season. They are the 3 seed in the region here. They beat Lipscomb 82-55 on Friday, just completely outmanning the Bisons. They are without Keyshawn Gilbert. He has a season-ending injury, 13.4 points per game for Gilbert. So that's a problem. But they've really had injuries all season. I saw a stat: only 4 Iowa State players have appeared in all 34 games. They've been fighting tons of injuries throughout the year. They did get the kid back on Friday. He had missed 7 games. I don't know how to pronounce it. Milan, whatever his name is. But he led all scorers with 20 points yesterday in the win over Lipscomb. Uh, a team that started 15-1. They are very, very good. They've got tournament experience. Really good coach. Beard knows him from his time at Texas Tech. And when you look at their losses this season, they have a 2 point loss to Auburn on a neutral site back in November. They lost to West Virginia on the road, 64-57 in January. They had one 3-game losing streak. That was Arizona away, Kansas State at home, and Kansas away. A couple of those were blowouts. They got beat 80-61 and 69-52 against the two Kansas schools. Houston beat them 68-59 away. They lost an away game in Stillwater, 74-68. BYU beat them 88-85 in double overtime in their home finale for the regular season, and then they lost in the second round of the Big 12 conference tournament to BYU again, 96-92. So two hell of a games there with the Cougars back to back. But when you look at this, look, they played good teams, so they could have lost these either way. But if you're Ole Miss, you can look at it and go, they're 3-3 in their last six without Gilbert.
Yeah. I told you this. I watched them yesterday in person against Lipscomb. And I mean, for Lipscomb, getting there is winning. And they played really hard, and they seemed like a group of really good kids, and they cheered for one another. And the coach got emotional at the end because he had some guys that had played for him for a long time, and emotional hugs and stuff. But they had no chance against an SEC or Big 12 team. They weren't skilled enough to pull that off. So I don't know how much you can read into that. Iowa State's big. They have some skilled bigs. They look a lot like Mississippi State, kind of that big look to them. The kid starts with Mom, something that went for 20 yesterday. He's very clearly a good basketball player. They have some wings who can shoot it. I don't know that their guard play is elite. So, how much Murray and Padula and them can take advantage of that, we'll find out. And I think it's a big game for Malik Dia. Got to stay out of foul trouble. It's a big game for Jamin Brakefield defensively. There's Ole Miss is what it is. There's not a lot of depth there. They're going to have to out-athlete Iowa State, but I think they're capable of it. And Dia cannot go commit 3 quick fouls and go sit. He's going to have to be smarter. But look, I think Vegas has it as Iowa State -5 or so. That line feels a little high to me, but I think it's coin tossy. I mean, I really do. I think it could go either way. It's going to be an interesting environment too, because they're going to play after Illinois, Kentucky. So Illinois, Kentucky is going to have that place juiced. That place is going to be rowdy. And then it's going to end, and there's going to be this 35-minute break between the two games, and everybody in the arena is going to go recover, right? They're going to go get them a beer or a soda or whatever, and some of the Kentucky fans, if they lose, are going to leave, and it's going to be a different environment a little bit, and so you're going to have to kind of adjust to that. It's going to be interesting. There's a ton of Iowa State people. I went to get lunch yesterday. I made the smart. You'd have been proud of me. I wasn't quite hungry. It was about noon, and I was like, I better eat something, or I'm gonna hate myself in 6 hours. And I went across the street from the arena to this restaurant that was just teeming with Iowa State people. I found out subsequently it was the Iowa State Hotel, and it
Oh,
was full of their fans. And once their game started, the place emptied out, and it was just me watching the first half of Mississippi State Baylor, which was very nice. And I ordered a pastrami sandwich, and it was very good. But there's going to be a lot of Iowa State people there, and so it'll be a different environment than it was yesterday.
who were they pulling for?
Um, I think most people in the building ended up cheering for North Carolina, and some of that was because they were coming back from a deficit.
Yeah, you're
Everybody,
cheering for the
everybody was,
good game at that point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then and I'm not good at that. People are like, "What percentage?" I'm like, I've never been in this arena before. I don't know. It beats me. There was a lot of Ole Miss people there, a lot of Carolina people there, a lot of Iowa State people. It was interesting. The Lipscomb people, for the most part, they were in a section right across from me. It appeared that most of them stayed and just watched the game, which is what I would do if I were a Lipscomb fan. I'd stay and watch North
Yeah,
Carolina and Ole Miss and enjoy the fact that my team made the tournament.
yeah. You came for a day and a weekend. Let's have a day and a weekend. Let's watch some basketball. No
Yeah.
big deal. Um, yeah, I mean, I saw Matt Jones comment, and he meant this in two ways, that Kentucky would have the third most fans there on Sunday of the three because Illinois and Iowa State would outdraw Kentucky. And also, according to Kentucky people associated with KSR, Kentucky did not travel very well relative to their normal fan base turnout at all for Milwaukee this weekend. So I don't, again, no clue. But if that tells you anything, that is a helpful reminder of how many Iowa State people are there, because he conceded immediately that there were way more Cyclones than Wildcats in the city.
You know what
So,
was interesting is I thought there would be more Kentucky media here than there
oh,
is. Yeah, and there's not a ton of Illinois media. There's just not a lot of media anymore. And then a
and
lot
that
of
might
the
just be it. It might just not be any media anymore. I mean, period. So, uh, we have the video from the postgame press conference and a report up on the side of the women's team yesterday. They knock off Ball State. They were down like 7-0, 9-0, and then ran away with it. They won by 20, 25 points in that one, setting up a game with Baylor in Waco. Michael, thanks for Super Chat. Morning just got better. Thanks for the coverage in the podcast and watch alongs. You are welcome. Appreciate you here, our friend. Let's see. Let's look at the schedule a little bit for today and tomorrow. We'll probably get out of here again. We're not trying to stay a ton of time. Um, Ginger said Mark Pope offered to pay for fans gas, so he's trying to
he
get some more
did.
Wildcat
He
in
he
town. I
he
did
got
not see
asked.
that.
He got asked about it yesterday, and he admitted that he basically had to turn off all of his social media because a lot of people literally took him up on the offer. He
Just I'll
seems
put
like
like
a
five
really nice.
grand on a gas card, and it's fine. It's cool.
He seems like a really nice guy, Pope.
It's bothering me, Neil. I need Kentucky to be the villain. I need them to have Cal and be kind of slimy. It was when they were in town. Their own team hated them. I mean, their own fans hated their team. They want to love Pope because of what he did for him as a player, but they don't like him as a coach necessarily. They don't think he's done the right thing. It's year one. I mean, it's Kentucky. They're all insane from a basketball standpoint, but I don't like Kentucky being, oh, well, it's fine. Just get the orange slices after the game. It's driving me mental. I need them to be mafia related in some way or something. It doesn't.
Yeah,
In saying that, I am very excited about 1:40 p.m. today for John Calipari and Rick Pitino in the NCAA
yeah.
tournament.
That's
Arkansas, St. John's today, 1:40, ready to go.
that's got a chance to be an interesting game. St. John's is really good, but they're not an elite scoring team, and Arkansas is pretty good at mucking it up. And I got to tell you now, if you go back 6, 7, 8 games, Arkansas's played really damn well with one outlier. They got blown out in Columbia, South Carolina. But they beat Texas, they beat Mississippi State, they beat Texas A&M.
They beat
Um,
Kentucky at Rupp.
they won at Kentucky, but I'm talking about just recently down the
Yeah,
stretch. You know, they lost in the tournament to Ole Miss, but they had a 3-point lead with 20 something seconds left. They just beat Kansas. They're capable today. That's an interesting. I won't get to see it because I'll be doing media at that moment. But that is a game that they could pull off.
the schedule for today begins at 11:10 a.m. So here in just an hour, by the time you guys ought to hear this in podcast form, will already be happening. But McNeese State, Purdue, that's a 12-4 game. Will Wade trying to get to the Sweet 16 with an upset of the Boilermakers before he takes the North Carolina State job, or he's already taken it before he heads to Raleigh. Arkansas St. John's at 1:40. Texas A&M and Michigan, hell of a basketball game. 4:15 today on CBS for the Aggies and the Wolverines. Real quick, let's catch up on lines for these games. Purdue is a 6.5 point favorite against McNeese. St. John's is a 6.5 point favorite against Arkansas. Texas A&M is a 2.5 point favorite against Michigan today, and that one Buzz against Dusty May. Interesting coaching matchup there in that game. Drake trying to get to the Sweet 16. They really handled Missouri from a pace standpoint in that one the other night. They get Texas Tech in an 11-3 game. Texas Tech 6.5. That's three 6.5 point lines of the first four games today. Auburn plays the Creighton Blue Jays today, 6:10 on TBS and True TV. Auburn an 8.5 point favorite against Creighton. Creighton knocked off who in the first round? I was watching this.
I can't remember.
Okay, doesn't matter. Louisville. I knew there was
Oh
connection
yeah.
to Ole Miss in some way. Louisville. The Blue Jays beat the Cardinals. BYU is a 1.5 point underdog as a 6 seed against Purdue today in Denver at Ball Arena. 6:45 on CBS for Wisconsin and BYU. Gonzaga and Houston is tonight at 7:40. It's a 1-8 game. Houston's a 4.5 point favorite against Gonzaga in
That's
Wichita.
all?
That's
Wow.
all, 4.5. And then your nightcap is Tennessee UCLA. Tennessee a 5.5 point favorite against the 23-10 Bruins tonight from the Big Ten, and that is at Rupp Arena. Tennessee gets to play its first two games at Rupp there in Kentucky. So
Go Vols. I'm telling you, I caught myself yesterday because of all the anti-SEC stuff. It's really kind of been like I'm almost like defiant against it.
oh
I was cheering for Mississippi State yesterday. Last night I was cheering. I was in my hotel room. I was like, "Come on, Sooners!" I mean, I was like just trying to will them to a win. The whole anti-SEC thing is bizarre to me. I mean, they have 8 of 32 in the second round. They're going to get at least 4 of the Sweet 16, maybe more. I hope they get 8. You know how much I would enjoy 8 SEC teams in the Sweet 16? I would laugh
well,
out loud.
like there was a couple of people from Fox yesterday, like, oh, we'll see. I mean, the SEC won, Ole Miss over North Carolina, but they blew a 22-point lead. It's like now we're just changing the goalposts the entire time. It's like, yeah, but they were sloppy. It's like, okay, like
It's literally the striker sets up for the kick, and they blow the whistle and go, hold on. I know the goal was here, but we're going to move it back and over to the left. Now you can shoot. And then when he misses the
yeah.
shot, they're like, you suck.
The early part of tomorrow, or actually, yeah, yeah, first kind of games tomorrow. Good games, SEC games related here. Again, Ole Miss, Iowa State tomorrow, 6:45 on True. Iowa State is now a 4.5 point favorite in this game. They were a 5.5. It's come down a little bit right there. They've got a total on this game of 145.5, so that's 72 in change ish both ways. 11:10 a.m. is when it gets started. Florida tries to punch its ticket to the Sweet 16. They play the Yukon Huskies, so you get Florida and Dan Hurley tomorrow morning at 11:10. Yukon outlasting Oklahoma and Jeremiah Fears last night in their opener. Florida a 9.5 point favorite in that game against Yukon. Florida looked dialed yesterday. I know it was a 16 seed, but they were pretty dialed in. They're all right. I think they're going to get past Yukon tomorrow.
I love their chances, yes.
Love their chances. Baylor and Duke. Duke minus 11.5 tomorrow against the Baylor Bears. Again, Baylor knocked off at Mississippi State yesterday. It's going to be the end for Scott Drew and his Bears tomorrow, who are 20-14. Then 4:15, what has turned into a really, really good game, Kentucky and Illinois, I think, tomorrow. 4:15 on CBS. Illinois a 1.5 point favorite there. That is the first game of the first of the session, I guess, with Milwaukee, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. Ole
There's
Miss
only one session,
yeah,
So you get
yeah.
if you're coming to the Ole Miss game, you should. Who am I to tell
Get
people
there
what to
early.
do? You would have fun if you like basketball, getting there early and watching Kentucky
Illinois
and
and Kentucky. And then the Kentucky Illinois fans can either go to dinner or have one of the best feelings in the world, which is your team's already in the Sweet 16, and you can just sit there and watch a good basketball game for a half and then go to dinner or whatever you want to do. St. Mary's and Alabama. Good luck to St. Mary's trying to keep up with Alabama's pace, but they better play better than they did against Robert Morris. They played
yeah.
with their food the entire 40 minutes there. The Crimson Tide in their opener, Alabama favored by 5.5. Huge contrast of styles in that one. That's 5:10 on TNT. Colorado State, Maryland. Maryland, who again, we talked about on the stream yesterday. Their head coach just calling out everybody after their in their pre media press conference the other day. I mean, we're too broke to pay for an extra night of hotels. We tried to go to New York, give the kids a good Christmas. Athletic department said, nope, no money for it. We have no NIL. Our AD's living for SMU, so how the hell am I supposed to negotiate with him? He's not staying here anyway. Like, it was fantastic. Like, it was so good. I mean, the long form version is you tell the media is looking around going, is this happening? And sure enough, what's his name? Damon Evans, he did leave for SMU yesterday. So he was not wrong. As Siski said, that's ultimate job security because on every Maryland message board, they are siding with the basketball coach who has them in the round of 32 right now. That's who the winner of this is.
How about Damon Evans? Only in America can you recover that fast from
Oh, he
personal
was the
skill.
one that got caught with the whatever, wasn't it?
Yeah, the
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
He was caught with the whatever. You better believe it.
The whatever.
You know, a lot of people get caught with the whatever, the paid for whatever, and you don't ever really recover. But coaches, ADs, not so
ADs.
much. They just kind of.
SEC, Big Ten, back SEC, Big Ten to the ACC now with SMU. Although I will be honest, Maryland not in a very good area. That school seems just weird to me. I think I'd rather be in Highland Park. I think it's a good move for Damon and his peeps.
You know, as a rule, the quote, I'd rather be in Highland Park, end quote, kind of applies to most everything. It really does. You know, I mean, you don't
He's
even have
going
to
from
have
one
any.
park to the other. He's going from College Park to Highland Park.
I
It's
don't
an
really need
upgrade.
any context on that. If someone just goes, hey, you know what? I'd really rather be in Highland Park. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Fair enough.
Your two late games tomorrow: New Mexico, Michigan State. That winner plays the winner of Ole Miss and Iowa State. That is back in the same bracket. So the Cyclones or the Rebels will play New Mexico or Michigan State in Atlanta next weekend for the Sweet 16. And then your last game of the day, it is should be a good one. It's a doozy. Oregon and Arizona on TBS. I like this one
Oh,
in a
yeah.
4-5 matchup. Arizona favored by 3.5, and then in the Michigan State game, they are favored by 7.5, and Maryland they are favored by 7.5 as well. So that's your region. It's been pretty scratch. I'm not seeing a lot of Cinderellas in this thing these next 2 days.
I have a feeling that NIL and all of that has really made it much more difficult for Cinderella to even get close to the ball.
Colorado State beat Memphis for their entry. That was a 12-5, and I think we all kind of saw that coming potentially. Like that just didn't feel right for the Tigers. Um, they've been seeded overvalued most of the day, most of the year.
Sure,
So
that went over
anyway,
really well. Went over well in Memphis, probably for Penny. I'm sure everybody reacted to that rationally.
oh, it's fine. Yeah, no big deal. Moving on. Baseball, football, we'll forgive you. It's all good.
Tigers baseball.
Yeah.
Oh
Yes.
shit! What time is Ole
Go.
Miss baseball today? Are they
It's at,
night?
it's at 4 today and tomorrow. It's a 4 o'clock game on Sunday
That sucks.
in Columbia, Missouri. Yeah. I had a moment yesterday in the fifth inning. Missouri had a 3-2 lead and had the bases loaded, and I went, "Oh crap, I don't want to deal with this tonight." Like it was just sort of, it wasn't even about Ole Miss; it was about me in that moment. I was like, I just don't
Sure.
really, and whatever. And then Mason Morris, you're my man. He gets a strikeout, gets out of the inning. Ole Miss takes the lead in the top of the sixth. They score like 4 in the seventh, end up winning easily 9-6. But Missouri, not a good baseball team in a really dumb, ugly park. Like it's not an appetizing like aesthetic there
Yeah.
in Columbia
Yeah.
for baseball. You don't think of Columbia and Taylor Field or Taylor Park as you know the national pastime and an example of that. So let's see. I know I should know this answer, but I don't. What time do the women play tomorrow?
Ooh,
Um,
that's a question. I don't. I think it's earlier, right? It's an earlier day.
I'm getting it. So Sunday for the women, it's at 3 o'clock on ESPN. By the way, straight ESPN network. Um, Baylor is favored by 3.5 at home against Ole Miss with a trip to the Sweet 16 on the line. Kentucky plays at 1, so it's a Kentucky, Kansas State, Ole Miss, Baylor doubleheader on ESPN. Kentucky beat Liberty, I think, by 1 point in the women yesterday to survive. So yeah. All right. What time is media today? No.
Iowa State's at 1:30, and then Ole Miss is after them. So I've kind of got a media window from 1:30 to 3, and then I'll have to figure out what I'm writing. Honestly, this is the day that it's kind of hard to figure out what you're writing unless somebody basically telegraphs you a story, and maybe they
Mm-hmm.
will. I'll write about Iowa State, but I was telling you, it's one of those deals where if you write a whole lot about Iowa State, you get that handful of people that they read emotionally, and they're like, well, so they're world beaters? And it's like, no, I mean, that's just who you play. And so I thought I would write about them. I mean, you know, you're writing about, I'm covering Ole Miss. I should write about Ole Miss, but kind of hitting the stage where, because I wrote a lot leading up to this and I wrote a lot in Nashville, that I kind of now need another game to be played.
Is everyone available today?
Yeah, that's the great thing about this, man. You get, yeah, they'll bring a couple players and Beard to the media room, but the locker room's open for half an hour.
Okay.
So you can go in there and talk to people and kind of see if you can drum a story up. I just don't really know what that story might be. I mean, unlike football where you've got 50 people who play, you got like 8 guys who play. Kind of feel like I've written the Brakefield Morrell thing to death. Um, I've talked to Murray and Padula a lot, and so I will figure it out. It'll be a little bit of a challenge, isn't the right word, but it'll be a little bit of a journalistic endeavor, I guess.
Ole Miss, Iowa State, 6:45 tomorrow. True TV for that one. One of those teams heading to the Sweet 16 in Atlanta next weekend. Again, we'll face the winner of Michigan State and New Mexico in that. So rebelgrove.com, a lot of content, a lot of coverage, video, Neil's writing, commentary on the message board, discussion, plenty of stuff, as well as women's basketball and baseball as well. So go check that out, and we will be back with you whenever we are. I mean, for sure Monday, potentially before as well. So take care, have a good day, and we will talk to you again very soon.